Hello, our topic is the Fibonacci numbers as a basis for the Zodiac. This is another tutorial video in a sequence of videos on the relationship of Fibonacci numbers and prime numbers to various things in astrology, and this one is perhaps the most mind-boggling and exciting of all of them. The patterns that we're going to see here are mind-boggling, and they relate directly to the concept of a zodiac. This is really amazing. This is a discovery by Brian Ray Payne. What he did is he took a sequence of 60 Fibonacci numbers that he had read about. He's been studying Fibonacci numbers forever, since he was a kid, and other number sequences, and playing with them. And one of the amazing things that happens is as you look at these things more and more, you start to see more and more. So he read about this sequence of 60 numbers, and he decided to put it around a circle. And when he did that, he started noticing striking relationships to ideas in astrology. First, let me tell you what this sequence of 60 Fibonacci numbers is. What you do with Fibonacci numbers is you take 0 and 1 and you add them. 0 plus 1 is 1. And then you take the last two digits and you add them together. So 1 plus 1 is 2. And what Brian did, simply put them around a circle. Okay, 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. 5 plus 8 is 13. And in this particular sequence of Fibonacci numbers, what you do is you use only the last digit. So 13, we just take the 3. 8 plus 3 is 11. We just take the last digit, which is 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. 4 plus 5 is 9. 5 plus 9 is 14. We just take the last digit. So you do that. In taking the last digit, we're dividing the Fibonacci number by multiples of 10. In mathematics, it's also called a modulus function. So it's a modulus 10 function on the Fibonacci number. And when you do that, after you do 60 numbers, you'll end up at 0 again, and you'll end up with 0, 1, and it will repeat forever, every 60 numbers. So what Brian Ray Payne did is he placed them around the circle every 6 degrees, because 60 times 6 is 360. So he places them around, evenly distributed around the circle. Okay. And then he starts to notice amazing, curious things going on. First thing, where do the number zeros appear? There are 4 zeros, and they appear at the beginning of the cardinal signs. If we think of this circle as a zodiac, and we think of this beginning point as Aries, we've got 0 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Well, that's a curious coincidence. The zeros end up right at the beginning of the cardinal signs. Then the number 5 appears only at the beginning of the other zodiac signs. So this would be the beginning of Taurus, Gemini, Leo, Virgo, Scorpio, Sag, Aquarius, and Pisces. And those are the only 5s. So we have zeros at the beginning of the cardinal signs, 5s at the beginning of the other zodiac signs. Interesting coincidence. So what Brian Ray Payne did is he drew lines from the center out to show those 12 divisions. So just a curious coincidence that these numbers are lining up with the beginning of the zodiac signs. Okay, those are the first two observations. 0 is at the beginning of the cardinal signs, 5 is at the beginning of the other signs. We're going to see there's a lot of extraordinary patterns going on here. That's just the beginning of this. Okay, next observation. There's a polarity where the opposite numbers are 0. So if we start with the beginning here, 0, we have 0 and 0 opposite each other. We go 1 over, 1, 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. We take the last digit as 0. Again, we have 1, 9. If we take the next one, 2, 8, 3, 7, 5, 5, 8, 2. So all of the opposite numbers are 0. Actually, they're 10, except for the beginning of the cardinal signs, which are 0. And then these 10s, using our division by 10, become 0 as well. So the opposite points become 0. We can think of 0 as the wholeness, the totality. Maybe if you want to get sort of mystical about it, it's like an emptiness or nothingness and a wholeness at the same time. So the opposite points balance each other in that way. So that's another interesting thing. Observation number 4 is there are symmetries. There are symmetries around all of our cardinal points. In astrology, we have the idea of symmetries around cardinal points as well. They're called antitia and contra-antitia. The idea is repeated here. And the symmetry is quite fascinating. It's an alternating symmetry. What happens is that you can see that surrounding 0 we have 1s, so perfect symmetry. Now, but if we go to the next number, the yellow ones, so we have the colored here to be symmetrical. So the orange surrounding 0 are 1. Now, how do the yellow, the next two numbers, how are they symmetrical? 1 plus 9. It's that they add up to 10. So every other number will be the same, and then it will alternate with adding to 10. So let me show you a few examples. 1 and 1 are the same. Now it's going to add to 10. 1 plus 9 is 10. Now it's going to go back to being the same. 2 and 2. Now it'll add to 10. 3 plus 7 is 10. Now it'll be the same. 5s are the same. Next ones will add to 10. 8 plus 2. Next ones are the same. 3. Next ones add to 10. 9 plus 1. Next ones are the same. 4 plus 4. Next ones will add to 10. 5 plus 5. Now notice this. The 5s sometimes act as 5 plus 5 equals 10, and sometimes they act as being the same, because 5 has the unique property that they are the same, and they add up to be 10. So they can act both ways. Again, this special quality of 5 is brought out in this symmetry. Again, that it is the only number that acts as being the same and as totaling to 10. All of the others will be one or the other. Obviously, all the others add to 10. 1, will match with 9 to equal 10. So another amazing thing is that we're symmetrical around vertically. The numbers are symmetrical in this alternating manner, and they're also symmetrical horizontally. So if we look here at this 0, we get same number 7, 3 plus 7 is 10, same number 4, 9 plus 1 is 10, same number 5, so here the 5s act as same number, and so on. And then 4 plus 6 is 10. So it's symmetrical in an alternating pattern vertically and horizontally around our cardinal points. And one of the things we see going on here is this yin-yang feeling, this alternating feeling where opposite points total to 0, and the patterning, the symmetry around the cardinal points alternates between being identical and totaling to 10. Very fascinating. Now, observation number 5, as if that's not enough. There's more and more amazing patterns going on. If you take any of these numbers and you go 30 degrees and add them, they will start to act like a Fibonacci sequence in that you can add the last 2 and you will get the next number. Let me give you an example to explain that. Let's go 1 to the right of our big red pentagram. So I'm at 1. Now let's jump 30 degrees. We're at 8. Now we'll start the Fibonacci concept of adding these numbers. And we'll go to the next number that's 30 degrees away. So 1 plus 8 is 9. 8 plus 9 is 17. Take the last digit is 7. 9 plus 7 is 16. Take the last digit is 6. 7 plus 6 is 13. Take the last digit, which is 3. See, and it goes all the way around. So what I'm doing is I'm taking, I'm going every 30 degrees and taking that last digit, and it works perfectly. And it works for every single number. You can start anywhere and do this. Let's start with, say, 3, the number before. And let's take 3 and 4. 3 plus 4 is 7. 4 plus 7 is 4 plus 7. If I could add, 4 plus 7 is 11. It gives me 1. 7 plus 1 is 8, gives me the 8. So I'm going every 30 degrees. So every 30 degrees has this kind of a Fibonacci idea. It's not a Fibonacci sequence in the sense we don't start with 0, 1, which is what Fibonacci numbers are. And you get 1 plus 1 is 2, and 1 plus 2 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, and 2 plus 3 is 5, and so on. But you take the first two numbers and you start adding in the Fibonacci way, and it works out perfectly. So again, repeating the emphasis of every 30 degrees. Something very special is happening every 30 degrees. And we see this special quality repeated in this repeating Fibonacci sequence, and we see it in the special properties of the number 5. All of these fascinating things going on with this Fibonacci sequence. Okay, so that's our 5th observation. These are just observations about how these numbers get distributed, and they show curious relationships to astrology. Okay, next thing we're going to do is look at these pentagrams, these 5-pointed stars. Another observation by Brian Ray Payne is he started drawing pentagrams in here. We have 60 numbers, so there will be 12 pentagrams, because 12 times 5 is 60, so we have 5 points, so there will be 12 of these. To show you what's going on, let's take the red pair and draw a 5-pointed star starting from here. Everybody knows how to draw a 5-pointed star. You draw down, and then across, and then across again, and then across, and then back up again. So let's draw this 5-pointed star like that and look at the numbers. 0, 2, go up, 4, to the left, 6, down and to the right, 8, back to the beginning, 0. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, back to 0. And in this case, we're going counterclockwise rather than in the clockwise direction that the numbers are. And you could think of this as going back 2 or going forward 3. It's the same thing. 3 of these peaks, 3 of these points, so which is either 144 degrees backwards, which is the same as 216 degrees forwards, right? Because there's 72 degrees between each of these. So it's either 144 backwards or 216. So basically you're going every 216 degrees forwards, and you're ending up going 2, 4, 6, 8, 0. And the blue pentagram does the same exact thing, but instead of going counterclockwise, you go clockwise. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and you're back. Just another amazing coincidence. Are these just coincidences? Does this have any significance or relevance? We'll talk about that later, but for now it's just an observation. Just an amazing patterns that go on. Now, what if you take the other 0 points? These other two. What we found is if we take the pentagrams that use these 2 vertical zeros, we get that. And what happens with these zeros And if we find the pentagrams that they're connected to, they're also 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. But instead of going the long way, you go every 72 degrees. So let's take, for example, this 0, and we'll go every 72 degrees, which is a little harder to see because these are drawn faint, but it's halfway between the blue and red. These are light green ones are going to divide or cut the blue and red pentagrams in half. They're falling right halfway in between. So it's halfway between from blue to red. So it's 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 0. Those are the 5 points. It's a little hard to find them, but that's them. And if I start this from this 0 and I go backwards, I'll get the same thing. So I'm halfway between blue and red going this way. I'm going to go in the this time counterclockwise. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, back to 0. So all of these pentagrams, these main pentagrams, we can think of this as like the primary pentagrams, the ones that come off the zeros, are all 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, either clockwise or counterclockwise, and either going 144 degrees or 72 degrees. And we're going to find out that all of the pentagrams have a pattern like this. The other ones are all odd numbers, and they're going to go either the long route, 144 degrees, either clockwise or counterclockwise, or they'll go the short route of 72 degrees, clockwise or counterclockwise. Every pentagram does this. I'll just quickly show you a few more just to verify that. Let's look at the orange ones, the ones that surround the red. They go the short route in both directions. I'll just show you real quickly. We're just going to go one to the right of the red. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, back to 1. If I take this orange one and go backwards, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, back again. The same exact thing happens with the two that surround the blue. So let's see here. If I start with this one, here's a 1 to the right of the blue, and we go around this way. So I'm going to go 1. I'm 1 before the blue. I go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 1. And if I start here and go the other direction, we have 1. Let's see. Oh no, getting mixed up. That was the one I just did. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. I just did that. So if I start here and go the other way, 7, 9. So it actually starts here. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and we're back. So I won't do all these. You have the idea. They're all going to do these kinds of patterns. Every single one of them is going to go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, either going 144 degrees or 72 degrees in either clockwise or counterclockwise. You can verify that for yourself. If you want to pause this and follow these numbers around, you'll see that the yellow pentagrams are going to go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 clockwise this direction, and long route, I mean they're going to go 144 degrees. So there's the 1, 3, 5, where am I? 7, 9, back to 1. You can follow all those if you want to. Okay, so to summarize, we end up with a beautifully balanced pattern where there are 3 pentagrams where the numbers go forward 144 degrees, 3 that go backwards 144 degrees, 3 that go forward 72 degrees, and 3 that go backwards 72 degrees. You can also think of the backwards as being forward, the complementary number of degrees. So you can think of going backwards 144 is the same as going forward 216 degrees. And here's a summary using the colors that I've assigned to them of how they work. And also we have what we might think of as 4 primary pentagrams, the ones that come off the zeros, which are even numbers, and then the 8 secondary pentagrams, which fall in between them and are odd numbers. So this beautiful patterning of pentagrams. Now pentagrams are something we don't use a lot of in astrology, unless you use minor aspects. So there's a combination of pentagrams and a zodiac arrangement of 12 built into this Fibonacci sequence. Very, very interesting. Now, but pentagrams do show up in astrology in another way besides the what we call the quintiles and biquintile aspects, which is that Venus turns retrograde every 144 degrees approximately. So here's a list of dates starting in 2000 to 2018 of when Venus turns retrograde and direct. And here I took this Venus at 17 degrees Aries and I made a little marker here at 17 Aries, and then went to the next time it turned retrograde at 15 Scorpio, and the next time at 26 Gemini, and I connected it with blue lines. And then when I got back to the beginning, I did green. And what happens is that Venus turns retrograde at 17 Aries, 15 Scorpio, next time 26 Gemini, next time 1 Aquarius, and next time 2 Virgo, and then 15 Aries. And see what happens? It came back almost to 17 Aries, but it comes back 2 degrees earlier. And then here, after another cycle, it comes back 2 degrees earlier, 13 Aries. So you end up with pentagrams, and each pentagram is offset, spun around 2 degrees. So the times when Venus turns retrograde, and if you plot the times when it turns direct, will form pentagrams, not a perfect pentagram, because it's approximately 144 degrees, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more. And then it gets offset 2 degrees each time around. But interesting that there's this pattern that looks similar to a pentagram in the times that Venus turns retrograde, when you plot each consecutive one. And also Sun-Venus conjunctions do a similar thing where every 72 degrees, each consecutive Sun-Venus conjunction is about 72 degrees apart. So if I put the 20 Gemini, 9 Aries, there's the 20 Gemini, 9 Aries, next one at 24 Capricorn, and I plotted 10 of them, and it will tend to spin around over time as well. If you keep doing this, the pentagrams will tend to spread out a little bit from each other and kind of gradually move around the zodiac very, very slowly at about 2 degrees per cycle. So very, very interesting that that Venus in relationship to the Sun from the Earth's point of view forms these pentagram shapes. I just draw little thin black lines to show that pentagram connecting the whole thing. So that's an interesting coincidence. More mind-boggling observations, just more coincidences, things that are closely related to each other. Consecutive Fibonacci numbers approach the golden ratio. If you're not familiar with the golden ratio, you can go to Google or whatever search engine you like to use and search for it and read the articles about it. But they approach the golden ratio, and also the segments of these pentagrams that we've drawn. The ratio of this segment to this larger line segment and this line segment to the whole line are in the golden ratio. So there's golden ratio stuff going on here. It's happening in two ways. The Fibonacci numbers themselves are closely related to golden ratio, and the pattern we've drawn has golden ratio relationships. So that is just more intricacy, more fascinating complexity and beauty and in these patterns. Now, more interesting coincidences. I talked about the symmetry around these numbers. Well, it's a curious coincidence that symmetry is extremely important in quantum physics and string theory, etc. Symmetry is a very important fundamental principle of how our universe is created. And just a coincidence that here again symmetry is emphasized. Another interesting thing about the fundamental nature of things is that one of the fundamental basic properties of the elementary particles is spin. Now spin, electrons and photons, etc., have spin, and spin was originally conceived as being just like a top that spins, or the Earth spins on its orbit, and then as physics advanced and got more developed, the formulas didn't match exactly our human interpretation of spin, so the spin of the fundamental particles of the universe has some things in common with spin as humans think of it, like a spinning top or the spinning Earth, but some things that don't fit into the idea of spin. So it's also interesting that taking the numbers and putting them around in a circle gives this sense of spin. We've got a circle, and how there's movement of numbers and relationship of numbers around the circle. So just curious, similar thinking going around with circles and sense of a kind of a spin, although this isn't a spin as literally, but it does draw connections around this circle. So there's some similarity in the fundamental principles of nature and the fundamental principles of these numbers. And also keep in mind that often a mathematical discovery is made and applications of it are found later. So right now you could just say, well, this is just fascinating curiosities of numbers. Does it have any real implications? And it is curious that it seems to have some relationships to astrology and some relationships to physics, or some similarities. Now, people who are physicists may not like that we're making connections with astrology, or may not even like that we're making connections to physics, because there is no known direct connection of these observations with physics. But who knows? Perhaps someday there will be. Perhaps there's something fundamental about how numbers are related to the spin and structure of things, and maybe even connects to astrology. That maybe 1,000 years from now something would be discovered along those lines. Who knows? But it is curious that there are similarities in the ways of thinking in astrology and physics, and in these number sequences making connections to both. Just interesting observations. So what's our final conclusion? What can we definitely conclude? What we can definitely conclude, without a doubt, is that Fibonacci numbers are arranged in patterns. That's a fact. Whether that fact implies anything or has any practical applications, that remains for the future to be seen, as far as I know, unless somebody already knows of some. In relationship to astrology, because this is a video that's a part of a YouTube page about astrology, perhaps the zodiac is based on the geometry of numbers. It's possible that this Fibonacci sequence and the way it creates these 30-degree segments could at least, perhaps metaphorically or symbolically or perhaps even energetically be related. We have no direct evidence of that yet, but perhaps it's possible. We will find out. In any case, this geometry is mind-bogglingly, intricately beautiful and fascinating, and we have to thank people like Brian Ray Payne, who spend hours and hours poring over these numbers and looking at them and arranging them and making these extraordinary observations. The one thought I have is it's too beautiful, too perfectly designed to not have some some relevance to something outside itself. That's my intuition, for whatever it's worth. Everybody has their own intuition about things, and sometimes they prove correct and sometimes not. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.